I'm Kelsey. I work for the British Institute of Cleaning Science, which is the largest educational body that's independent within the cleaning industry. I don't really know myself what half the letters mean, but I know about cleaning. So that's what I'm going to talk to you today about. So, often when we talk about efficiency and productivity, we're left with TMI, too much information, which hopefully in 20 minutes I'm not going to give you. But what I am going to talk to you about is training, mobilisation and inspection. So it wouldn't be right if I came from BICSc and didn't talk about education and training, but I'm going to talk about training in a way of creating a more efficient environment, but thinking about it in maybe a slightly different way. So, there we go. As we all know, training obviously offers a lot when it comes to compliance and also efficient ways forward, whether that's the way that we use certain products, different cleaning equipment, or even just having that chat with staff and giving them a bit of a G-up whilst we've got the time to be with them. But when we actually train, what are we actually hoping to establish? When we think about healthcare, especially within NHS England, we're looking at that internal movement between IPC teams, cleaning teams, clinical teams, all to share knowledge of training throughout. There's things that we can learn from each other. There is a light on here, I get it now. I feel like I need to stand like this. And to understand the importance of clinical teams and estate teams and the existing training that we already have, but where we can take that. And there's that big word, we have mandatory training as well, which helps in a way to take away that unskilled career or task when it comes to cleaning. But there's so much more we can do outside of this. The stigma that we have post-pandemic has sort of gone back to a pre-pandemic sort of way. We had our 5 minutes in the spotlight where we're heroes, we're here, we're ready to go. And then we're sort of back to that negative curvature down. So I had a look before I came. Now, coming from years ago, working within the NHS and being on site since, I know what we all face in the cleaning side of things from different parts of a hospital, but I also know the positives. So I thought I'd have a quick Google and see what's out there. So these are some of the things that I found from editorials, newspapers, journal articles, etc., all around different nurses' opinions to do with cleaning. And as we all know from the new national standards of cleanliness, we've seen that dual responsibility throughout. But we can see here, nurses on cleaning duty, a waste of skills or part of the job. There's conversations to be had. But in order to drive that efficiency, we need to make sure we're adopting this way forward together. So what's really going on? If we look at what we've got our favourite phrase, the National Standards of Healthcare Cleanliness, which we all know and love. We've got that multidisciplinary approach. We've got star ratings, performance parameters, cleanliness charters, and the introduction of efficacy and technical audits, which altogether really do create an excellent way forward in efficiency, but it's about adopting it correctly. My personal favourite is the adoption of the efficacy and technical audits, because what it does now is it's not only about the cleaning, it's also about the way that we do it. So, let's talk a bit more about that. Whether we adopt within England the National Standards of Healthcare Cleanliness, and even outside of England, that efficacy part and the impact it has on all of those outer teams is huge. And if we don't fix that outer objective, there's no way we're going to drive efficiency. So as we said before, we've got this negative curvature of cleaning coming through again. And it's only through that efficacy that we're going to fix that. Now, I will get there, I promise. We need to talk about blurred lines and what that actually means. Now, although a fantastic song, blurred lines within healthcare cleaning can mean so many different things. My favourite part of blurred lines is the famous phrase, to clean blood or not to clean blood. None of us really know. And if we ask the cleaning operatives that we have on site, if you ask them what they're responsible for, I can promise you that they will not 100% know what they are actually responsible for when it comes to blood. Where is the blood? Do I clean it? Do I just give it a quick wipe just to save going and asking somebody else to do it? But even the blurred lines outside of that, as we go to a multidisciplinary approach, do the healthcare workers actually understand what they're responsible for? Now, it's been a few years since I've actually worked in a hospital outside of working for BICSc, but what I do now is I go onto sites, I do independent audits, I do training, I go and have a chat. And every single site I go to, there's questions around things of responsibility. For example, the biggest one is where a medical piece of equipment is on a table. Now, we know from the National Standards of Healthcare Cleanliness who should be responsible for that. But cleaning operatives have a lot of questions around, do they clean the table that the medical device is sat on? How far up the legs do we go? Do we clean around the medical piece of equipment? If I clean the table now, when is the clinical member of staff going to actually clean the medical piece of equipment? So what ends up happening is you've got two different things in one space with different cleaning regimes. Again, another piece of blurred lines. So yeah, responsibility. What do you know? What do they know? We have these amazing questions in the efficacy audit, and where different trusts are creating their own questions to check things off, it's sometimes easy to question whether we all actually know the answers. So one of the questions I saw on one of them was, is the rotary machine being kept in a safe position? A brilliant question. Now, if you'd have asked me that question 3 years ago, I would have had no idea what a rotary machine was, what it meant to be safe, and what position it should be in. But yet we've got people in positions, in clinical teams, in cleaning teams, and in estates teams that don't actually know what it means for that machine to be in a safe position. In the same way, when you ask the average person what we should be using a green cloth for outside of a cleaning team, the answers are sometimes a bit varying. So, if we're changing something on a site with the recommendations, what are we changing and who are we actually telling about these changes? Is it something we're keeping close to our chest, and are we sure that every single person in that environment knows what's going on? And mandatory training. Who's it mandatory for? We know that the cleaning teams may get it. We know that some HCAs may get it, for example, nurses, maybe some of the estates. But who's actually receiving it? And is everybody receiving the same thing? And assurance. Are we all sure we know how to accurately mark for that compliance or non-compliance? So the same thing again. Recommendations, are they site or on a trust basis, or are we following national standards? And if there is a deviance, what literature is available to the people putting it in place? And again, with the assurance, if we're putting it down as a marking for compliance, are we actually sure the people we're putting in the position to mark know what's going on? Now, obviously, I'm going to carry on talking about training and ways that we can implement things. But just as a bit of a caveat, I am from BICSc, but this is not a selling opportunity. So I have got a picture of a lovely group from Morrison Hospital in Wales who did not implement BICSc training, but did a fantastic job of implementing their own training and creating new job roles out of it, which meant that when they actually trained their cleaning operatives in different skills, maybe cleaning medical equipment, they were able to hire the roll up. This was a quick caveat and a well done, because I am going to go on about BICSc a little bit now. Okay, so whether we look at the UK, Germany have some fantastic national standards of cleanliness, and other countries, national standards in different countries have helped define the different roles of stakeholders, which, believe it or not, is the first thing that we need to think about when we think about efficiency. If somebody does not know what their role is or what they're doing, the confusion creates too much of a waste of time. The assurance that we put in place, so through efficacy and technical audits, we need to make sure it doesn't blur our own lines. But the key thing that we've learned along the way is that transparency is the only way we will get continual development. We've started to introduce that through star ratings, through amazing conversations between different teams. But we need transparency on a very big level, an even larger level, and that we need to use our experience as a tool of innovation and not segregation. Now, I've spoken about differing countries here because I'm going to go through a bit of a case study now, and it's a little bit of a different one. So, obviously, for the past few years, we've been ready with the national standards of cleanliness in this country, but I'm going to talk to you about Saudi Arabia. So, in January this year, BICSc spent 1 month in Saudi Arabia implementing national standards of cleanliness in a hospital. Now, what that meant was that we had a hospital full of people that had never been trained before to a national standard. They had no understanding of functional risks, and they'd had no actual, even whether it's accredited or not, time spent with them actually telling them what to do. We spent a month there, and what we did is we took a renal centre. The idea behind that was that it would have different functional risks within the area. It would have patient-facing rooms, non-patient-facing rooms, and procedure rooms available. And what we did is we spoke to the Ministry of Health and we said, what functional risk would you like? When that wasn't really understood, we showed them the national standards of healthcare cleanliness. And we said what we recommend to start off with is we recommend a 3-step process, so FR1, FR2, and FR3. We'll forget the 6, we'll go back to basics. So FR1 was for procedure or infection, FR2, patient-facing, and FR3, non-patient-facing. And within that, we used the 50 elements, we talked about performance parameters, what was expected, and we started introducing new terms. So new terms for them were things like rapid response teams, assurance policies, technical audits, efficacy audits, worded a little bit differently to help with the obvious changes in the environment. We wanted to look at the productivity of how many people they had on site, the products they used, and the different ways that we had to work around prayer times and different products that are allowed within the Saudi Embassy allowance. So what we decided to do is we pre-trained staff when we were there. Now, again, another caveat, you're going to see some horrible pictures of me full of sweat in Saudi Arabia. But here we go. So the initial skills that we had were carried out by Save Fast, which is a training partner of BICSc. Now, you're going to see some lovely codes on the screen here, but I'll do my best to explain them. So we separated the group of people we were given into 4 different groups. So we had a floor care team. As we've heard this morning, very important to talk about floor care and the ways we can implement that. We had a ward area team, so that was like general ward area, a washroom team, and a rapid team. Now, the rapid teams were also used to do deep cleaning outside of their normal rapid care. And the skills that they did, for example, if we take floor care, was like dust control, mop sweeping, mopping, wiping, scrubber dryers, buffing a floor to get a sheen, not a shine, and also AU3, which is deep cleaning and scrubbing. For ward areas, general cleaning activities such as damp wiping, mopping, washing surfaces, high-level cleaning, all of that sort of stuff. Washroom care, general washroom cleaning and shower room cleaning, deep cleaning, and rapids, basically all of the above. Now, when I tell you that rapid response was probably the biggest uptake when people signed up, it was ridiculous. We had 38 people on the trial, and all 38 people signed up for it. After they were put through every single training process, so they joined the floor care team, the washroom team, and the general ward team, we ended up with 5 people wanting to be rapids at the end because they realised how much they were actually going to be responsible for. So, after we did this, the training was done in an environment outside of the hospital setting. We took them out of it, we did fake scenarios, you know, spilling the good old soup up the wall, ketchup on the floor, all the rest of it, and then we actually applied it at site. But the difference was we went in ourselves. So on the first day, sat there very nicely, dressed very nicely up, and then after that, the trainers were on, the work stuff was on, and we went to site. Now, the issue with efficiency when we have training is that we give people time to learn, which is amazing. We give them time to adopt the information we've given them and to practice. But what happens when we get on site changes in terms of they've been given all this time to learn, and then they're put in a real-life situation with real-life patients, and they're not sure how to navigate around all of that stuff or how quick things need to be, and that there's a patient waiting to get into that bed and we need to adopt it. So we spent a week on site, actually physically cleaning alongside the operatives. And as you can imagine, well, I don't speak Arabic, I don't speak Hindi. It was quite a hard situation to be in, but I do and you do, it was the same thing. So if you worked alongside people, it meant that they got that grasp of the speed that was needed. We went through different machines, different scenarios. So we went through infectious scenarios, went through general scenarios, washroom scenarios. You can see on the right a lovely picture of a medical machine from before. I'm more than happy to share the afters because I was very proud of it. In fact, it was my lock screensaver for a while. We also took the supervisors and the auditors into these situations, and the girl here on the left-hand side with me was actually the cleaning manager who went through every single step of the cleaning process herself, all of the training, and did the implementation. We did all of the inspections together, and we even invited the cleaning operatives themselves to come onto the audit to actually see what was going on. And in this week process, we went from getting looks from the nurses and the doctors as to why on earth 38 people all of a sudden were on their hands and knees scrubbing away at polish, to a doctor going down the middle of the corridor on a scrubber dryer, very excited about the innovation that we'd created. So, the mobilisation of this, what did that actually mean? We had to use diversity kit on site. This was simply because this is what is accepted by the Saudi government at the moment, so we had no choice, we had to use what was there. So we used scrubbing and buffing machines, wet vacuums, scrubber dryers, and we used only water because the training around chemicals was really difficult. Recommended for the future of the trial, we wanted a ride-on scrubber dryer that the doctor had loved so much. At the start, we had 13 products that were available and approved for daily use, and we went down to 3, which meant it was a more efficient process because people weren't mixing 13 chemicals in the morning, went down to 3. The reason we had to include Sprint flour, if anybody has used it, is because of the smell, and the hospital wanted the smell, in this case, of a cleaning chemical. We then recommended periodic use of a stripper and a polish, and implementation of twisted diamond pads for the future. The big important one is productivity for the efficiency. The overall site meterage was 3,124 metres squared, and it had 32 staff members when we walked in. If the training is carried on and adopted, which it has been, we split into 2 teams. I'm just going to put them on the screen. We introduced a rapid for each team, which was outside of the scope of what we recommended because the hospital was in that bad of a state on the ward that we needed a deep clean process going in. So, what we all want to know is how effective was this? So, we did an audit. We did a BICSc cleaning and hygiene audit at 6 a.m, it was me, on the 5th of January 2024, on the first floor of the kidney centre. And we did a BICSc audit, which covers personnel, so we look at the actual cleaning practice of the people, whether they're putting the warning signs out, whether they're comfortable in what they do. Look at the cleaning cupboard, how compliant it is, the electrical equipment that they have, health and safety, so that's all about documentation, SOPs, the scheduling, whether it's actually fit for purpose, the quality control, so are they actually doing inspections or are they actually trying for this? And we also rated it as an FR2 because it had a really good mix in there. So for the blended area approach, we audited to a functional risk 2. So as I said before, we used the audit app. We did virtual courses with everybody. We did virtual courses with everybody in inspection and auditing. We used BICSc standards and best practice. We did an independent cleaning audit and we used BICSc training. Again, we did the all-important inspection. The initial score that we got, believe it or not, was a whopping 6%. So this was before any training had happened. This was a complete independent audit review. And you can see here from the sections that we used, personnel scored 24%, cleaning cupboard 7%, and so on, with scheduling and quality control at 0%. And the actual cleaning inspection for functional risk 2 was at 12%. We also use a system called VariClean, which is a fluorescent spray that we spray in hidden areas to see if they were actually manually cleaning. It's okay to look at something and think it's clean, but was this actually being adopted? So we pre-sprayed the areas, so we should have an example on here. We sprayed the area, when you shine a light on it, it shows up. And again, VariClean was a diversity product that we used simply because it's accepted by the government. And then when the light's not on it, you can't see what's going on. So it's a brilliant way to see if things are actually being cleaned. We sprayed in 15 different areas. I'm just going to list them on the board. So sanitizer board, dirty utility sign, door panels, undersides of sanitizers, handrails, really difficult places, but places that should be cleaned on a daily basis. There's a lot of these. There we go, medical machines. So it was covering all different responsibility groups. Lobby chairs, lift command panels, you name it, we did it. After 3 weeks of implementation, we went back and checked, and 100% of the areas had been cleaned off when we checked with the spray. Now, I wish I had pictures of that, but all it would show you is a light switch or a door panel, because if it's gone, the light's not going to show anything. After 6 hours of implementation, so having spoken to the cleaning supervisors, the managers about documentation, better practice, we left them to it for 6 hours. We came back and audited, and that original audit went from 6% up to 63% in 6 hours. We'd reduced from the 32 people originally for the first audit down to 8 people. This was literally down to the fact that we'd been on site and actually explained to every single person the same information and shown in person. Again, it's separated here. So personnel went up to 76%, so still not 100% best practice, but we're getting there. The cleaning cupboards went up to 54%, electrical equipment 60%, health and safety, that was documentation. I don't know about you, but I can't write 20 risk assessments in 6 hours. That was the reason we're still down at 17%. But scheduling had gone up because supervisors had been trained how to actually put people in places, and they'd carried out inspections during that 6 hour period where they could keep a track on what was going on. And the functional risk level 2 went from 12% up to 80%. It got audited last week after 6 months of implementation, and it has been at 96.5% for the last 3 months. So it's carried on. So I'm very grateful to the Ministry of Health in Saudi for allowing me to use this as an example, because it is one of their chief hospitals. But the biggest lesson that I took away from this is that training is brilliant, but if you don't actually implement it with people on site or mobilize the training that we use, we are not going to get the efficiency that we require. We can do whatever we need to on a piece of paper and work out whatever sums we want, which we did. And originally we got to 6 operatives on each shift. We then moved it up to 8 on each shift, because when you actually see what goes on in person and all of the different things that can happen, for example here, the fact that female cleaning ladies weren't allowed in male toilets and things like that, or access to a cleaning cupboard, all of these small things that happen on a day-to-day basis will not give you a correct productivity review. But efficiency in soft services, if we talk about training, you need to remember the key thing of mobilization afterwards, which is actually being with your staff, getting out of the office and cleaning alongside them. If we give them 20 minutes to mop a floor in a training situation, we're going to expect 20 minutes of mopping a floor in a real life situation, unless we actually get out of them.